Let's start at the beginning. Why did you really want to run for governor? What was your thought process when you were having to make that decision? Obviously, it was a big decision.
Yes, I feel like Texas is at such an important turning point, and the outcome of this election is going to determine whether we create a 21st century economy that works for all hardworking Texans and not just some. And I believe that it's time for Texas to have a governor who is going to fight for all people and be a voice for them every day because their future depends on it. But I also believe it's time that we have a governor who's going to fight for us to have a world-class education because our future depends on that.
No doubt this is something you have to weigh with your personal life also, because it's a thing that would, kind of throw things into chaotic turmoil for at least a year. This has been a particularly nasty campaign when it comes to the ads and everything. How do you prepare yourself for that kind of criticism?
I've come through some tough personal times in my life and overcome long odds along the way, from being a single mom struggling in poverty to where I am today. And compared to some of the battles I've been on in my journey, this is nothing, and it's worth it because it's not about me. It's about fighting for the people of this state and making sure that they're going to have a voice in the Texas Capitol.
More than a year ago, I was there and watched you on the filibuster on the Senate floor when you were going up against the Republican-backed abortion restrictions. Even though you were a senator and you'd been a Fort Worth city councilwoman before that, before that moment that put you in national spotlight, do you think that you would have been the clear choice to be the Democratic nominee for governor?
There's no question that that day created an opportunity. The opportunity created by it was that people all over the state woke up to the reality of what was happening and what the leadership in this state was doing. And I think that awakening really is what created the opportunity, not necessarily that it had anything to do with me personally.
The filibuster was not your first filibuster. The session before, you had gone up against the rules for the school finance system as well.
Right.
Did that filibuster kind of inspire you to do the next filibuster? What was your thought process on getting up in front of the Senate and standing for that long a second time?
I've always been a fighter. From the moment that I began struggling after my parents got divorced, I've had to fight my way. And it was really a natural extension of that for me. That first filibuster meant so much to me because I found my way out of poverty through education. And when I saw that the leadership in this state was bent on cutting $5.5 billion from our schools, I knew that someone had to stand up and speak out against it, and I did. And the same last year, when I saw that leaders in this state were moving in a direction that was truly going to endanger the lives of women in this state and take away health care that they'd been receiving, I knew I had to stand up and speak out.
Recently, you released your book, and in it you shared some very personal stories, including, word and sharing your story about your own medical abortions. Was that something you had to discuss with your family? I'm going to be sharing a lot, but there's an important reason for this.
I did talk with them ahead of time, including my former husband, to let them know that I had decided to share this and to help them understand why it was important, that other people who are struggling with the same very difficult decisions that my family confronted need to know that they're not alone.
You had that in your head, obviously, whenever you were on the floor doing that filibuster against the abortion restrictions. Why not bring it up then?
I thought about it, and I talk a little bit about that in the book. But I knew that if I did, it would make the day about me. And the day needed to be about the voices that had been silenced, the thousands of men and women across the state who had been told that their testimony was repetitive and who were not heard. It was about giving voice to them.
Has it been difficult to, not necessarily distance yourself from that issue, but move beyond just being a one-issue candidate?
I wanted to make sure, as I put my foot on this campaign journey, that people understood the whole picture of me, that I have a long and strong history of fighting for our schools, and to make sure that children can tell the same story that I can tell, that they grew up in a state that partnered with them and believed in them, that if they would work hard, they could become anything that they dream. And I also have a long history of fighting for people in the arena of consumer reforms, whether it's payday lending or in the insurance arena or the electricity arena. I am a candidate, I am a public servant who is there because I believe that people deserve and demand to have a voice in the Texas Capitol, and they certainly deserve to have someone who is fighting hard against the very well-paid, well-heeled lobbyists who are there pushing back against the things that really matter to them and make a difference in their day-to-day lives.
So many of the issues you've talked about just now and things you've dealt with as a senator are still playing out in the court system, you know, the abortion restrictions, school finance, and now voter ID. What does your experience in the Senate dealing with those issues directly on a legislative level give you when it comes to possibly being the governor?
When you've been someone in battle, when you've fought for these things, and you understand how precious each of these issues is and the impact that they have on the lives of the people in this state, it strengthens your resolve. It has certainly strengthened my resolve. But I also have had an experience of watching leadership that has forced us into partisan corners, that has thrown these issues on the table that are divisive. And it's time for Texas to have a governor who will unite our legislature once again, who will set a vision for how we are going to fund our schools and what we're going to do to make sure that people are paid well for working hard, and what we're going to do to bring that $100 billion of our tax money back from DC and put it to work for us through Medicaid expansion that will provide insurance coverage for hardworking people, but also will create about 300,000 jobs a year in our state. We need a governor who's going to bring Republicans and Democrats together at the table to do what's right for the people of this state and to put this nonsense, this partisan division aside, and it's my intention to do that.
Greg Abbott has also been dealing with those issues on the legal side because his office has been going into court talking about those things. You know, recently when we talk about Greg Abbott, there's been some criticism of your campaign for some of the ads that have come out recently, namely the ones that have pointed out his use of a wheelchair. Can you talk about that a little bit?
You know, what our ads point out is that Greg Abbott rightfully was able to access the court system and seek a remedy when he suffered a terrible tragedy. But he has actively worked since that time to deny that same right to so many others. Others who have been harmed, have been the victims of rape, people who have also been disabled and haven't had the ability to receive compensation for that. People who have been the victims of a sociopathic surgeon who paralyzed them and maimed them, and who have been denied access to their day in court by Greg Abbott, who has been fighting against their ability to do so. That ad seeks to point out the hypocrisy in who he is. And as we have been talking in this campaign, we've been making sure to highlight for people an understanding that Greg Abbott has been in court fighting against 600 school districts to keep our schools from being funded. He's been in court fighting to defend what has now been twice called by a federal court an intentionally discriminatory voter ID law. He has been in court fighting against marriage equality, even though states across this country are moving forward in a different direction in that way. And he's been fighting in court against making sure that people have the same kind of compensatory relief that he had. And I think it is a responsibility during a campaign for people to understand who it is that these candidates are that are asking for the privilege of serving them as their next governor.
I know you're hoping for a win in November, but if it doesn't work out, you know, what do you think you have done for the future of your party?
Well, first of all, I very much believe that we're going to win. And I see it everywhere I go in this state, an enthusiasm behind this race that I haven't seen in gubernatorial politics since Ann Richards. But regardless of the outcome, people have come together. We have created an infrastructure in this state that is so strong now. And going forward, we've positioned ourselves to continue to make sure that the voices of hardworking people in this state won't be counted out, and that they will be an important part of electoral politics going forward in this state.
Thank you very much for